The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. Richard Vance cleared his throat for the fifth time in 3 minutes, his eyes darting everywhere except at my face. Julian, we have decided to go with someone else for the senior developer position, but next season you are definitely at the top of the list, Richard said clearly. I stopped listening. 5 times. 5 times I had sat in variations of this exact conversation. 5 times I had heard the phrase next season, like it was some kind of consolation prize. My hand stayed folded in my lap, but inside something fundamental shifted. The part of me that cared about this company, about proving myself, about being the team player, just went completely quiet. My name is Julian Thorne. I am 48 years old, and I have been a software developer at Crestline Tech for 12 years. I was not just any developer. I was the developer who kept our entire core processing system from collapsing into ruin. I was the one who had trained 4 people who had leapfrogged past me on the organizational chart. I was the one who worked until midnight fixing everyone else's mistakes because I could not stand seeing our users suffer through incredibly buggy code. Emphasis on had been that person. Richard was still talking. He was the director of engineering, in his mid-60s, the kind of guy who thought wearing expensive sneakers to the office made him relatable to younger staff. We really value your contributions, and your technical skills are solid, but we felt that Oliver brings a more strategic vision to the role, Richard explained calmly. Oliver who had been here 3 years. Oliver who had asked me last week how to implement a basic caching strategy. Oliver who had once pushed code to production that crashed our system for 4 hours until I rolled it back at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday evening. That is fine, I said, cutting him off politely. My voice sounded normal, calm even. Thank you for letting me know. Richard blinked several times. He had probably prepared for frustration or loud arguments. I had given him both in previous rejections. Year 1, I had been emotionally devastated. Year 2, I had presented a detailed case explaining why I deserved the promotion based on pure output. Year 3, I had asked what specific skills I needed to actively develop. Year 4, I had already been numb, but still asked for constructive feedback. Year 5, I was completely done performing for these people. Oh well, good. I am glad you are taking this professionally. Richard shuffled his papers awkwardly. We are announcing Oliver's promotion tomorrow. I trust you will help him transition into the new role. Sure, I said blankly. The word tasted like cardboard in my mouth. I walked back to my desk in the open plan office. My screen showed 3 critical tickets assigned to me, 2 internal messaging channels blowing up with red notifications, and an email thread with 17 unread messages, all marked highly urgent. For 12 years, I had treated every single urgent request like a personal mission to solve. Not anymore. I opened my personal email instead. The message I had been too scared to fully consider sat quietly in my drafts folder. The subject line read, Application for Senior Software Engineer Position, Tech Vista Solutions. I hit send decisively. Then I opened the next draft and the next one. By the time I left at exactly 5:30 in the evening, something I had not done in several years, I had confidently submitted applications to 7 different technology companies. When I got home, my wife Sarah was making dinosaur chicken nuggets for our son Max and our daughter Chloe. Our kitchen was total chaos as usual. Max's backpack was spilling math papers onto the floor. Chloe's massive art project was covering half the wooden table. You are home very early, Sarah said, kissing my cheek lightly. Is everything okay? They gave the promotion to Oliver, I said flatly. Her hand froze on the oven door handle. Oliver, the guy who broke the entire database last month? Yes, Sarah, that is the one. I picked up Chloe and hugged her tightly against my chest. I am completely done, Sarah. I am actually done trying this time. She knew exactly what that meant. We had had 4 previous versions of this exact conversation. Each time I had been upset, but ultimately committed to trying harder, to being better, to waiting patiently for the elusive next season. What were you thinking of doing? She asked carefully. I sent out 7 applications today. I am going to send out more tomorrow morning. I sat Chloe down and looked at Sarah directly. And I am absolutely not doing any extra unpaid work anymore. No more late nights fixing other people's ridiculous mistakes. No more being the company's safety net. They want strategic vision. They can simply get it from Oliver. Sarasa studied my face intently. We had been married 22 years, together for 25. She could read me better than anyone else alive. You are completely serious, she asked softly. Completely, I replied firmly. A slow, proud smile spread across her face. Good. You have been slowly killing yourself for people who do not appreciate you at all. It is about time you stopped trying. That night, after the kids were finally asleep in their beds, I sat down and made a list. It was not a pros and cons list or a career development plan. I had made enough of those useless documents. This was fundamentally different. It was a strict list of things I would no longer perform. I would not check messages after 5:30 in the evening. I would not check messages before 8:30 in the morning. I would not work on weekends under any circumstances. I would not fix other people's bugs unless explicitly assigned to me by management. I would not volunteer for extra side projects. I would not train people who got promoted above me. I would not stay late for sudden emergencies that were not actually emergencies. Then, I wrote the things I would actively do. I would do my assigned work only. I would leave at exactly 5:30 every single day. I would take my full, uninterrupted lunch break. I would use all my accumulated vacation days. I would interview aggressively outside the company. I would always remember that I am a human being, not an endlessly renewable corporate resource. I folded the paper neatly and stuck it inside my desk drawer, where only I could view it daily. The next morning, Richard sent the department-wide email, officially announcing Oliver's promotion to senior developer. The congratulatory messages immediately flooded the group chat. I sent a brief congratulations message and got back to my assigned software ticket. 30 minutes later, Oliver appeared nervously at my desk. He had that sheepish look people get when they firmly know they did not really earn something. Hey, Julian, I know this might be awkward, but thank you for the congratulations, Oliver said slowly. You are completely welcome, I said, not looking away from my glowing screen. Listen, I am really going to need your technical assistance getting up to speed on the legacy systems. I know you built most of the core processor, and honestly, that code is pretty complex, he admitted nervously. I will assist with anything that is part of my official job responsibilities, I said smoothly, still typing rapidly. If Richard wants to formally assign me specific training tasks, he can easily put them in my project queue. Oliver shifted his weight uncomfortably. Right, yes, of course. I just meant, informally. Like how you have generously helped me before. Before, I would have enthusiastically said yes immediately. I would have set up multiple meetings, created extensive new documentation, and walked him carefully through every function and module. I would have made absolute sure he succeeded, even though it meant my own work got pushed to lonely nights and weekends. I have a pretty full plate right now, I said calmly, but I am entirely sure you will figure it out successfully. You have that strategic vision management was looking toward. The words came out a bit more pointed than I had originally intended, but I did not take them back. He left my desk looking highly confused. Good, let him be confused. By noon, I had easily completed one ticket, a medium priority bug fix that took exactly the amount of time I had estimated. I did not rush through it, I did not cut my lunch break short, and I did not immediately grab the next urgent issue from the backlog. My phone buzzed loudly with an internal message from Peter, one of the other developers. Hey, the payment integration is throwing massive errors in production. Can you take a quick look? You fixed something very similar last month, Peter wrote frantically. Old Julian would have immediately dropped everything. New Julian simply checked the ticket system. The issue was assigned directly to Oliver. I typed back cleanly. That is assigned directly to Oliver. He can probably help. Oliver is stuck in meetings all day long. This is incredibly urgent, Peter replied quickly. You could escalate the issue to Richard if it absolutely cannot wait until Oliver is available, I responded calmly, and then I muted the messaging channel. 3 agonizing hours later, the payment system was still entirely broken. My messaging app was full of increasingly frantic messages from various departments. Someone had pulled Richard in. Richard had frantically messaged Oliver. Oliver had eventually messaged me. Julian, I am stuck in back-to-back planning meetings. Can you please just take a quick look at the payment issue? It should be very fast for you, Oliver pleaded digitally. Fast for me, because I had spent 12 exhausting years learning every single inch of our complex systems. Fast for me, because I had fixed similar structural issues a dozen times before. Fast for me, while Oliver comfortably sat in meetings enjoying his new senior title and much higher salary. I typed clearly, I am heads down on my own assigned work. So sorry. Then I aggressively turned off the notifications completely. At exactly 5:30 in the evening, I packed my bag and proudly left the building. The payment system was stubbornly still down. It was completely not my problem anymore. Sarah had taken the kids to evening soccer practice. I had the quiet house to myself for the first time in several months. Instead of anxiously opening my laptop to check on work problems, I opened a lovely bottle of red wine, put on some relaxing old jazz music, and thoroughly updated my professional resume. 12 years of concrete accomplishments looked truly impressive on paper. I had designed and implemented the entire core processing system, handling $80 million annually. I had successfully reduced processing time by 75% through intense algorithm optimization. I had actively mentored 15 junior developers. I had flawlessly led the migration from legacy databases to modern cloud infrastructure. I had maintained a 99.8% continuous uptime on highly critical systems. Any smart company would be incredibly lucky to have me. It was past time I aggressively found one that would actually recognize that simple fact. My phone rang loudly. It was Richard. I confidently let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail again. Then a frantic text message came through. Julian, we really need your assistance with the payment system tonight. Can you please call me back immediately? I poured another glass of wine and started happily filling out more application forms. By the time Sarah finally got home with two completely exhausted children, I had applied to 4 more prominent companies and had received a highly positive response from one. TechVista Solutions wanted to formally schedule an initial screening call. The office called you 15 times, Sarah said, glancing worriedly at my phone on the kitchen counter. I know they did. I smiled widely. And you did not answer a single one, she asked, raising an eyebrow. Nope, not a single one, I replied happily. She grinned beautifully. I am kind of loving this rebellious version of you. Me too, I said confidently. I suddenly realized for the first time in many years I had spent an entire evening not feeling stressed about work. My shoulders were not incredibly tight. I was not mentally debugging broken code while trying to help Max with his difficult homework. I proudly scheduled the TechVista screening call for my lunch break the very next day. Wednesday morning, the office felt vastly different. People kept nervously glancing at me as I walked past my desk. The payment system had apparently stayed down until almost midnight, when they had finally brought in someone from the infrastructure team who had implemented a terrible temporary workaround. Not a real fix, just a workaround. The kind of sloppy Band-Aid solution I would have severely cringed seeing in our code base. Richard stopped directly by my desk at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning. Julian, can we talk privately? Sure, I said easily. In the main conference room, he insisted firmly. I have a scheduled stand-up meeting in exactly 5 minutes. We can easily talk right here. I remained comfortably seated. He looked incredibly uncomfortable. Good. I tried calling you multiple times last night. We had a highly critical issue with the main payment system. I clearly saw the assigned tickets, I said. You saw them? Why did you not step in and help? Richard demanded, lowering his voice angrily. I met his eyes calmly and directly. It was not assigned to me. I was diligently working on my own assigned tickets during my regular working hours. But you fundamentally know that system vastly better than anyone else here, he argued desperately. I do. I built it, I agreed easily. But Oliver is the official senior developer now. Those major escalations should rightfully go to him. Oliver is still ramping up his knowledge base, Richard hissed angrily. Then maybe the overall timing of his promotion was not entirely ideal, I said evenly. I simply cannot keep being the unpaid safety net for critical systems while being constantly told I am not senior-level material. Richard's face flushed bright red. This is entirely about the recent promotion, is it not? You cannot confidently tell me I do not have the strategic vision for a senior role, and then fully expect me to save the day every single time something breaks. I stood up smoothly and walked away toward my stand-up meeting, leaving him standing there looking absolutely furious. The Tech Vista phone call went exceptionally well. The hiring manager actually seemed deeply impressed by my extensive practical experience. They wanted a formal second interview. Thursday morning, Oliver stopped by my desk again. Julian, I really need to clearly understand the core processor architecture. I have a massive meeting tomorrow morning. Did you thoroughly check the official documentation? I asked politely. What documentation? He looked completely lost. I pulled up the extensive internal wiki I had spent 3 entire months meticulously creating 2 years ago. It is all right here, I said. This is a lot of reading. Could you maybe just give me a quick high-level overview? Oliver pleaded desperately. I do not have 30 free minutes today. Maybe early next week, I said. Next week? The meeting is tomorrow. Oliver panicked visibly. Then you should probably start reading the documentation right now. His jaw tightened angrily. You know, absolutely everyone has noticed you are being incredibly difficult lately. I actually laughed out loud right in his face. Oliver, I was the ultimate team player for 12 exhausting years. I am completely done being the team player who constantly gets played. Now, I am just doing my actual job. He walked away angry. I genuinely did not care in the slightest. Friday afternoon, Richard called a highly mandatory team meeting. I want to loudly address something that has been happening this week. Richard started aggressively. We have had several critical issues that took vastly longer to resolve than they ever should have. We strongly need everyone actively contributing, not just doing the bare minimum. His angry eyes found mine across the crowded room. We always help each other here. We always go above and beyond when required. That is the exact culture we have built. I slowly raised my hand. Yes, Julian, Richard asked dangerously. Quick question about that specific culture. I said loudly. Does it proudly include promoting people who consistently go above and beyond, or does it merely mean using them as a convenient safety net while promoting people with significantly less actual experience and knowledge? The entire room went completely, shockingly dead silent. This is absolutely not the appropriate public forum, Richard started loudly. No, I strongly think it is, I said, confidently standing up. You have intentionally built a toxic culture where people like me are fully expected to work long nights and weekends to fix absolutely everyone else's mistakes and then smile politely when we are passed over again and again. That is an outright exploitation culture. Julian, if you have deep concerns about your career development, we should discuss that privately. Richard barked loudly. I have thoroughly discussed it privately 5 separate times, I countered smoothly. So, here is exactly what I am doing now. I am working my legally contracted hours, doing my assigned work, and fiercely saving my extra effort for companies that actually value it. I picked up my silver laptop. Anyone who has a serious problem with that can freely take it up with human resources. I proudly walked out. I felt absolutely electric and totally alive. My phone buzzed wildly before I even got to my car. It was an urgent email from Human Resources requesting a mandatory meeting on Monday morning. By the time I smoothly pulled into my driveway, I had multiple messages from 7 different coworkers, all highly supportive and encouraging. Sarah took one proud look at my face when I walked in. What exactly happened? I happily told Sarah everything. She smiled and hugged me warmly. I am incredibly proud of you standing up. Over the quiet weekend, I prepared meticulously for the Human Resources meeting and my important second interview with Tech Vista. Monday morning, I walked confidently into the Human Resources department. Helen sat formally across from me, along with Richard and Patricia Reed from Corporate Human Resources. Julian, we urgently wanted to discuss Friday's unfortunate incident, Patricia began smoothly. Richard strongly felt your public comments were highly inappropriate. I respectfully disagree completely, I said calmly. I was directly responding to statements Richard made about our team culture. You publicly questioned management decisions in front of the entire department. Patricia narrowed her eyes dangerously. I questioned a heavily documented pattern of behavior that has severely affected my career development, I countered strongly. Patricia's eyebrow twitched noticeably. What exact pattern? I pulled out my incredibly thick folder. 5 years of flawless performance reviews, all marked as exceeding expectations. 5 years of documented applications for senior positions. 5 painful rejections. In that exact same time period, 7 people with significantly less experience and vastly fewer qualifications were actively promoted to senior or lead roles. I slid the heavy documentation across the table. We promote based on a highly complex variety of factors. Richard started defensively and weakly. Then those exact factors should be fully transparent and applied completely consistently. I shot back fiercely. What specific technical qualifications did Oliver possess that I currently lack? Silence instantly filled the small room. Because from where I am confidently sitting, the main difference is that Oliver does not ever push back when he is heavily pressured to work 60-hour weeks for completely free. I stated clearly and loudly. Patricia wrote something down rapidly. Julian, no one is officially requiring you to work beyond your contracted 40 hours. No one is officially requiring it, but it is implicitly heavily expected, I replied smoothly. Going forward, Patricia said carefully, we strongly expect absolute professional conduct in all team settings. I agree completely. Let's keep future discussions strictly professional, as long as that exact standard is applied equally to management. Patricia's lips pressed together tightly. I happily went back to my desk. The second interview happened during my peaceful lunch break. 2 senior engineers and the vice president of engineering thoroughly interviewed me. I flawlessly nailed every single question. I am actively looking for a company that actively invests in developing and genuinely promoting their strong performers, I explained confidently. We will definitely be in touch very soon, the vice president said warmly. I joyfully floated back to my desk. 17 incredibly urgent messages waited. The core claims processor was having massive, catastrophic failures. Oliver had terribly broken something deep in the code. New Julian calmly read through the complex error logs, easily identified the critical problem, and then smoothly closed the terminal window. Oliver practically sprinted in a panic to my desk. Julian, people are heavily counting on the system. Can you please just tell me exactly what I broke? Did you officially submit a formal ticket? I asked casually. A ticket? Julian, come on. This is a massive emergency, Oliver pleaded desperately. Richard made it explicitly clear this morning that I firmly need to follow appropriate channels, I said calmly. His face went bright, angry red. Fine, be petty. But when this affects our users and the company suddenly loses millions, that is entirely on you. No, I said quietly but firmly. It is entirely on the director who promoted someone who was clearly not technically ready. But it is absolutely not on the person who is being paid as a mid-level developer and is finally acting exactly like one. He aggressively stormed off in a rage. Tuesday morning, I received an amazing email from TechVista. They strongly wanted to make a formal offer, senior software engineer, a massive 35% salary increase, full remote flexibility, 5 weeks of paid vacation. I called Sarah immediately with joy. They officially offered me the job. I negotiated slightly on the signing bonus. They enthusiastically agreed, and I proudly accepted the offer. I wrote my crisp resignation letter that night. Wednesday morning brought absolute, undeniable chaos. The entire production environment was completely down. Not just one single system, but absolutely everything. Oliver tried to hastily deploy the fix for his optimization overnight. Peter whispered fearfully. The main database is heavily corrupted. It is really incredibly bad. At noon, the powerful CEO appeared, Maxwell Stone, late 60s. He, Richard, and several vice presidents quickly disappeared into the executive glass conference room. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed urgently. Julian, can you please come to the executive conference room immediately? Richard asked desperately. I confidently walked over. Maxwell stood powerfully at the head of the long table. Julian, we have a massive crisis situation. Our entire production environment is completely down. We desperately require your immediate help, Maxwell said heavily. I thought about 12 exhausting years of being consistently passed over. I thought happily about the signed offer letter from TechVista. No, I said clearly and loudly. You could have easily heard a pin drop. No, I absolutely cannot help you, I repeated firmly. Cannot or will not. the furious chief technology officer demanded aggressively. Both, I said smoothly and calmly. First, I am officially classified as merely a mid-level developer. This is a massive senior-level crisis. Second, since I am no longer officially authorized to access the core production systems under my strict mid-level role boundaries, touching that corrupted database would be a direct violation of company policy. In fact, accessing a protected computer system without proper authorization could be construed as a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I will absolutely not expose myself to legal liability to fix a terrible mistake I did not make. Maxwell stared directly at me, completely stunned. We will definitely make this worth your while, the vice president of operations interjected desperately. A massive bonus. Immediate promotion consideration. I do not want mere consideration. I have had 5 agonizing years of consideration. I pulled the crisp resignation letter from my notebook and placed it gently on the polished table. I am officially giving my formal 2 weeks' notice. I have happily accepted a senior engineer position elsewhere. Maxwell slowly picked up my letter. What exactly would it take for you to stay? Name your terms. There are absolutely no terms, I said calmly. You cannot possibly undo 5 years of being systematically undervalued with one panicked crisis negotiation. So you are just going to let the entire company burn down? The CTO yelled wildly. I am going to do exactly what you have paid me to do for 12 years, I replied evenly. My job, during my legally contracted working hours, at my assigned mid-level capacity. I will thoroughly document my current assigned projects, but I am absolutely not fixing this crisis. I proudly walked out for the second time in a week. At exactly 5:30, I happily logged off and left. Sarah had picked up the kids and ordered a massive, delicious pizza. How was work? She asked with a knowing, bright grin. I quit, I announced joyfully. You confidently walked out on the CEO and accurately cited federal law, she gasped, laughing loudly and beautifully. The next 2 weeks were incredibly fascinating. The highly expensive contractor team eventually got the system semi-stable but not fully fixed. They desperately requested my historical documentation. I happily provided it, strictly during working hours in purely written form. Oliver was quietly and permanently removed from the senior developer role. Peter and 2 other highly skilled senior developers submitted their resignations the exact same week I did. Human Resources scheduled a mandatory exit interview with me on my final day. Patricia Reed conducted it quietly. What specifically would have genuinely made you stay at Crestline? She asked. Deep recognition of value long before a crisis occurs, I stated simply and powerfully. I started happily at Tech Vista the very following Monday. The incredible difference was immediate and profound. My great new manager, Laura, met with me on day 1 to explicitly outline clear growth paths and technical expectations. The brilliant team welcomed me warmly. I proudly left at 5 o'clock every single day without an ounce of guilt. 3 wonderful months into my new role, Laura happily pulled me into her office. We are opening a principal engineer position next quarter. I strongly think you would be absolutely perfect doing it, she explained warmly. I eagerly applied. I confidently interviewed. 2 weeks later, I was officially promoted to principal engineer. It took me exactly 8 short months to go from an undervalued mid-level developer at Crestline to a highly respected principal engineer at Tech Vista. I heard reliably through former coworkers that Crestline eventually had to heavily hire 3 separate senior developers just to replace me. Richard left the struggling company 6 months after I did. The massive exodus I had started turned into a giant wave. One sunny Saturday morning, about a year after leaving the toxic environment, I randomly ran into Oliver. I heard you are doing really incredibly well, he said awkwardly. I am. I nodded happily. Look, I have really wanted to deeply say, I am sorry for how everything went down back then, he apologized sincerely. I truly appreciate you saying that, I said honestly. Your bravely walking away taught me something crucial, Oliver admitted softly, about knowing your actual true worth and not letting corporate systems exploit you. We parted ways very cordially. I suddenly realized I did not harbor any lingering anger toward him anymore. The real issue was always the massive corporate system itself. Companies that purposely built highly toxic cultures around exploitation. I had finally powerfully stopped playing their rigged game. These days, my lovely life looks entirely different. I log off at exactly 5 o'clock. I am fully present for family dinner every night. I build complex, elegant software systems during the day, and I build a real, deeply meaningful life at night. I am advancing rapidly in my career without sacrificing my family or my precious sanity. And every single time I confidently decline a non-urgent meeting scheduled after 5 o'clock, I peacefully remember sitting in that stale conference room. I vividly remember hearing next season for the fifth agonizing time and making the powerful decision that I was completely done waiting. My great new engineering team at Tech Vista knows they can always count on me. They also implicitly know I have a rich life outside of the codebase. I am a significantly better engineer because I am not chronically burned out. Last month, Laura warmly asked if I would be interested in officially mentoring some of the newer, younger engineers. I will absolutely teach them advanced technical skills, I told her firmly. But I will also strongly teach them to heavily value themselves. I will aggressively teach them how to set strict professional boundaries, and most importantly, how to firmly know exactly when to walk away. She smiled broadly and happily. Julian, that is exactly why I asked you. So now, I actively and proudly mentor 3 junior developers. I teach them flawless clean code architecture and highly efficient system design. I actively teach them exactly what I desperately wish someone had wisely taught me a decade ago. Sometimes Sarah casually and sweetly asks if I deeply regret not speaking up sooner during my 12 years at Crestline. I really do not. I correctly learned exactly what I firmly needed to learn. Max is 12 now, and Chloe is 10. They are beautifully growing up, proudly watching a father who works incredibly hard, but who also fundamentally knows his exact true worth. Just the other lovely day, Chloe asked what exactly I do at work all day long. I carefully build complex computer systems that heavily help people solve big problems, I explained simply and warmly. Are you really highly good doing it? She asked innocently. I am very incredibly good doing it, I nodded proudly. Does your boss fully know you are really good? She pressed cutely. I smiled happily. Yes, sweetie, my boss definitely knows. Life is far too incredibly short to stubbornly spend it desperately trying to convince blind management of your obvious value. Safely find the smart people who already clearly see it, and happily give them your absolute best work. Absolutely everyone else. Confidently let them frantically figure it out when you are finally completely gone. Crestline eventually figured it out. It was vastly much too late, and it terribly cost them millions, but they figured it out. I am simply not there to sadly see the aftermath anymore. I was always rightfully worth significantly more than waiting patiently for next season. I just had to finally strongly believe it enough to completely stop waiting, stand proudly up, and start boldly walking toward the door. And once I finally bravely did that, absolutely everything beautifully changed.